You look ready.
Oh, yeah, and I've underlined some of the,
You guys ready?
some of the sentences.
You ready?
I think it'll read the agenda.
Okay, welcome everybody to the regular board meeting of Calaveras County Water District, Wednesday, October 10th. It's 1 p.m. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Becky, will you take roll?
Here.
I'm here.
Here. Okay, we're going to go into closed session here at the beginning of our meeting. It's a little bit changed, a little bit different than we usually do. We're going to discuss public employee appointment, Government Code 54957, regarding our general manager. We're going to have a conference with legal counsel, potential litigation, and conference with legal counsel with anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to division, blah, 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 Government Code 54956.9, one potential case. And we'll be back at the conclusion of closed session.
Is that going to be today?
Just a reminder to take public comment before we go in on the closed session items.
Do we have any public comment on the closed session items? Seeing none, we're going to get into closed session. Thank you, Dave.
And when I come back, you guys, I want Dakota to actually smile. There it is, okay.
This works for me.
Is that on? Okay, we're meetings back in session. We're back from closed session with no official reportable items, but at this time, I do want to make an announcement that our general manager, Mr. Dave Egerton, has accepted a position effective November 1st as the executive director of Aqua. We certainly want to congratulate him on this prestigious, as I've quoted before, that it is probably one of the most prestigious positions in water in the state, and it's an honor to have, worked with Dave, and so I do want to thank him for his service and at the same time congratulate him moving forward. And if anyone else has any, I'll make one other quick announcement. We are working on our interim general manager, and we as a board have decided to extend an offer. The contract has been worked out for Jeff Meyer to be our interim general manager effective October 15th, and the agreement has not been formally completed at this time, but there's in principle everyone is in agreement on everything going forward, and it will be signed and put together by then.
Okay. If I might make a few comments, or just thank you, Dave. Thank you so very much. And as Dave and I have talked, over the last 4 years, he came in and righted the CCWD ship, and I think that I will get a concurrence from the rest of the staff, and he did a remarkable job for us, not only as a GM, but as a true friend. I really appreciate that, and I expect to see you back here from time to time, and at the Aqua conferences. Thank you, Dave.
You made me look pretty silly in the paper. But I'll forgive you.
And Dave, I'd like to thank you for your service. I think that this agency was greatly enhanced by your presence and your leadership and your skills. Leading up to that point, there had been this revolving door of general managers that was really, I think, a reflection of just how difficult a general manager position in, meeting the needs of everybody, but I'm certainly grateful for everything you've done, and I've enjoyed the time we've had together, and I wish you well in the Aqua position, and I hope that our paths will cross again. So good luck, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You guys have been incredible to work for. Director Davidson too, just a terrific board, and Director Mills in his time on the board. I can say, it's incredibly lucky to have such a dedicated professional board, really. I mean, and you're not all of the like mind. You frequently disagree on issues and have different perspectives on policy, but you handle it in a very again professional way, and I feel incredibly lucky to have had that opportunity. Likewise, the staff are amazing people, amazing professionals and people, and I got a lot of friends here, and that's really hard to leave and say goodbye to them. But I particularly, I just want to recognize. I mean, the management team here is second to none, and I know I brag on them a lot, but I don't take them for granted. This district is doing well through a lot of the leadership and the dedication that they show, and I've been so proud to work with them. They've made me look good so many times and never got any credit for it. As well, the rest of the staff here in the office and in the field, I mean, just phenomenal people, the mission is, what could be more important than making sure that we're providing, safe, reliable water and wastewater services to the community and things that really do affect people's lives and future generations. And I think this group really gets that. Lastly, I just want to say I would only be leaving this job because of the opportunity to be the executive director of Aqua. That's something I've always dreamed about since I started in the water business 15 years ago. And I wasn't looking to leave here to go to another agency. This is truly a really rare and special opportunity, and I feel confident that whoever sits in this desk next on a permanent basis will be an outstanding general manager. I firmly believe that. I think you're going to have some great applicants, and I will definitely at every opportunity say how much I've enjoyed being here, and this is an excellent place to work, and this district is, the community support for what we do is incredible. I mean, even through the tough times of moving through a rate increase and taking a year to get there. I mean, just incredibly, people that care, genuinely care about this community and realize we're all in this together. So with that, I just want to thank you guys again, and I can't wait to come back. I wish I had the giant checks to give you like Aqua JPIA, but, I'll try to, give you a hat or something, so whatever I can bring. Thank you, guys.
I also want to congratulate and welcome Jeff into the position of interim manager.
Well, me too.
Yeah.
No, thank you, Dave, and yes, we do look forward to working with Jeff, and I'm sure we won't miss a beat, and you're leaving the district in good hands, and thank you, Jeff, for accepting that position. Okay, we're going to move on to in our agenda item 5, our consent agenda. Following items are expected to be routine, non-controversial. Items will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member may request that any item be removed for later discussions.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Rebecca, will you take roll?
Director Strange?
Yes.
Director Thomas?
Yes.
Director Underhill?
Yes.
President Rademacher?
Yes. Okay, moving on to new business. Thank you all for doing that. I appreciate it. Moving to the consent. Wow.
Half of the agenda's
Wow.
gone.
Yes, but you have me.
And I understand you won't be saying much.
No, this is
Okay.
wishful thinking.
And Jeff Meyer, currently our Director of Administrative Service, who was promised to be brief today, is going to take on item 6A, accept and file of GASB 45 actuarial valuation of other post-employment benefits and actuarially determined contributions report.
That is a mouthful.
Yes, it
Thank you,
is.
Mr. President, members of the board. There's really two items before you today, and they're both due to valuations. Actuarial valuations is a special look at the liabilities of certain programs, retirement benefits that the district provides. One is retiree health, which is other post-employment benefits, OPEB. The others is our PERS. So we're going to be looking at both of these. I'm assuming that you have read both valuations, all four valuations, page to page, and know everything in detail, so I'm just going to hit the highlights. This is certainly something that certain types of people really enjoy, delving into the numbers. I admit I'm one of them, so I have read a lot of this information, but just bringing it to a very high level. The Nicolay valuation report, you have two of them attached to your agenda package. And I'm going to address the second one first and then go back to the first one. The second one is the valuation of other post-employment benefits. It actually has on the front cover of it the word revised. That's the true valuation. It's the second report within this grouping.
Can you tell me what page, please?
There are no page numbers. It looks just like this. It says, it's behind the second blue piece of paper.
Okay,
It's in 6.
This is item number 6A.
okay, I got it,
We all there?
yeah.
It's late in the day, Russ just needs a little bit of help getting through this binder.
Okay.
I missed lunch.
Director Strange?
All I have is a miscellaneous plan behind the second blue, miscellaneous plan.
Oh, no, are you on 6B or are you on,
6A.
we're on
6A.
6A?
It's blue.
I did read through this last night, too. Although with a much different anticipation and excitement than you would, I'm sure.
Okay,
All right, there it is, thank you.
very good. This is a valuation that has to be done every 2 years based on GASB requirements. And this is the second time we've worked with Nicolay, the actuaries out of San Francisco. They're top-notch. They're one of the best in the business, and our auditors actually approve of their work, so that's a good thing. We provide retiree health benefits. In the case for current retirees, it's kind of a pay-as-you-go. For current employees, it's pre-funding. And this actuarial valuation is the tool to figure out how much we're going to have to put aside for future benefits for current employees. Basically, they do this valuation, look at everybody, do the census data, mortality rates, costs of future health benefits, looking at discount rates, investment, figure out, here's your huge liability, this is how much you have in the bank, and this is how much you're going to have to set aside each year. That's taking it down to the very basics. And we have been setting aside money each year since 2009. We're ahead of the game, whereas a number of agencies are not. So I want to go to page number 1 of the valuation report. It's the summary of key valuation results. It's right after the table of contents. There's a couple of key points here that I think are very important for us to understand and to congratulate us for. If you look at the second, under the disclosure elements, actuarial accrued liability, or total OPEB liability. Our total OPEB liability is $13,077,306. That's for everybody, active and current retirees moving forward. We actually have assets of $6,414,366. If you go down right below that, our net liability is $6.6 million. We're 49% funded. We've done that since 2009. And you have, this was an originally 30-year plan to become fully funded. Your board, Director Underhill, back when I first joined, you set aside money to pre-fund this and get it going. So this is what we want to look at. This is good stuff. Some agencies haven't even set aside any money. So that's really the highlight that I wanted to bring forward to you. There is a chart on page 5, a graphic chart that shows the funded status. And you can see how we started out in 2009 and where we are right now in funding. If you look in the blue, that's our total liability. You look at the red, that's how much our assets are worth. And the funding level that is the green bar. I don't know if it turned out in color in your handouts or. Okay. So again, we're doing very, very well. How have we accomplished this? We've made annual payments into a trust fund that is administered by PARS and is invested through Highmark Capital Division of Union Bank. Now, I'm going to ask you to please go back to the first report. And in that report, I'd like you to go to page 8. This is the ADC report, which is the it's the actuarially determined contribution. This is something that says what our annual contribution should be over time moving forward. And if you go to page 8, in the middle of the page, the ADC actuarially determined contribution for fiscal year 18-19 is $851,958. Now, this report was completed after we submitted our budget, but I was in conversation with Nicolay to get some preliminary numbers, and in our budget for this year, for this particular pre-funding is $850,728. So we're pretty much spot on as to what we're going to need to set aside money. The only challenge moving forward is to make sure we have these funds, but also how well is Highmark Capital doing on their investment strategies and investments. The most recent report statement I got as of, I want to say August 31st, let me grab that, had us at an ending balance of $7.7 million. This report is as of June 30th, 2017. So we've increased our assets by another 1.3 million since this time, and our average 5-year annualized rate of return is just over 7%. So we're on target with our discount rate, which you can see right below it on this same table, discount rate. However, I don't know if we're going to be able to maintain that discount rate with the mix of investments we have. Market just went down, I think, 600 points today. 50% of our assets are in equities. 45% are in fixed income, which are bonds, 5% in cash. So that's going to be a challenge. So when we do our next valuation, we may have to reduce our target discount rate, which would probably end up increasing our annual contributions. But that's down the road, so we'll be able to see where we stand in another 2 years. That's a high-level summary, and I'm open for any questions. And this is just a receive and file item.
Might I say, I remember when you talked about our funding in advance, and you obviously convinced the whole board that that was the right thing to do, because everybody raised their hand or agreed, and so we're now seeing the fruits of the sacrifices or the level of investment that we did make as a agency.
It did, and your board did a great job at that time, and I personally feel that this is the right decision, not only for the district to maintain its solid financial footing, but it's also following through on a commitment to their employees. Mm-hmm. And so it's a win-win situation.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Jeff. If there's no further questions on 6A, we're going to move to 6B. Stay right there. Discussion direction regarding PERS annual valuation reports as of June 30th, 2017.
This
In
is-
one paragraph or less.
Basically, we have no say in how this is done, this report. This is performed by PERS. It gives you a view of the 3 different plans we have. We have a classic plan, which is miscellaneous plan, which is 2.7 at 55. We have a second tier plan, 2% at 60, and the Pepper plan, and that's all outlined in the staff report. Our biggest liability is in our classic plan. That is no longer offered to new employees. So in PERS, you pay two parts, actually there's 3 payments the district makes to PERS. The employee contribution, the employer contribution normal cost, and the employer contribution unfunded accrued liability. Basically, the normal cost is what PERS says you're gonna need to fund the future benefits for the current payroll, and it's a percentage of payroll. The unfunded liability is a catch-all for basically everything that's done in the past where PERS hasn't made their expectations, their projections, your payroll is higher than they anticipated, their investment returns were not as great. So that's something that is moving forward. If you go, and I'm going to skip to the worst, the most representative of the all our employees, and that's the very first valuation report, and it's for miscellaneous plan. And if you go to page 4 and page 5. Actually, let's focus on page 5 and we'll call it a day at that. If you go at the top, it's called plans funded status. Are we all there? Mm-hmm. Okay. And the column on the right, as of June 30th, 2017, it talks about the present value, the market's assets, unfunded liability, which is similar to what we did in OPEB, and funded ratio. We have an unfunded liability at the end of the fiscal year 2017 of under just $9.8 million. Our funding rate is just over 74%. That changes year to year. As you can see to the left of it, the prior year it was 72.5. A lot of that is based on PERS success in the market of reaching their investment targets. Now, if you go down to the middle chart, it shows you the required contributions for both the normal cost and the unfunded accrued liability. The normal cost, as you can see, is a percentage of salary. We pay that every payroll. So it goes across the board. We're basically at 13% and then going to go up to 14 and level out at 14%. This is also including the fact that PERS is already lowering their discount rate from 7.5% to 7%. They're already working downwards. Now the unfunded liability is the bottom line, and you can see those contributions there and how they're going upwards. That is where we're going to have a bigger and bigger hit on our budget. PERS has noticed this, and if you go to page 10, where the amortization schedule and alternatives showing how you can pay off, how that unfunded liability is scheduled to be paid off, and it's scheduled over 30 years. If you look at the left column on page 11, the current amortization schedule, and over time with their interest rate at 7%, we'll have to pay $20 million to pay off that over time. You can, through PERS, do what they call a alternative schedule, what they call their fresh start alternative, which is to pay more each year, but a shorter time frame, sort of like paying your mortgage down faster, either 10 or 15 years, and you can see the savings down below. If you pay it off in 15 years, you save $2.8 million. If you pay it off in 10 years, you pay it $5.5. But if you look at the payment amounts, those are real significant. I think they're beyond our reach. So there are other alternatives, similar to like we did the PERS side fund loan a number of years ago when we paid that off, took out a loan and reduced our cost. I've reached out to our bond counsel and got some initial numbers on how we can look at this and maybe go out and take out a financing through a bank or other institutions. It would have to be a taxable issue just because of the dynamics of the loan, and I know rates are going up, but at 5%, which I believe is fairly doable, that 20 million would go down to 14.2 million. And we could set our own payment schedule of around 950,000 a year and be able to pay it off early. What I'm going to be doing is looking at all these options and coming back to your board at a future time to figure out how we can reduce our costs over time.
But you're talking about taking a loan, and when you take a loan, there's interest that you have to pay on that.
And we're paying PERS interest too.
So that, you know.
Yeah. PERS interest rate is 7%. They charge you the same amount that they anticipate on investments. So what I'm trying to look at is how to reduce our interest costs. So there's different options, and I just want to let you know that PERS offers a solution to say pay more but fewer years. The other solution is to try to say this maybe 15 years but at a lower interest rate. This item is just informational, so if you have any questions. Oh, I do have one other request. As I mentioned, we have two other plans that are, one is PEPRA and one is second tier, tier number 2. So if you go to the next plan, which is behind the next blue piece of paper, and go to, this is PEPRA, and if you go to, page number 5, in the middle of that chart, where it says the required contributions, you can see that our normal costs are much lower. Instead of 14%, we're at 7.5%. And our unfunded liability payments are $6,000 versus the $800,000. So as our employees age and retire and move out of the 2.7% of 55, our costs are going to go down. And that was the intent of Governor Brown pushing through that legislation and pushing through PEPRA. That's all I have.
Okay, we're looking forward to you bringing back your ideas or new plans to reduce that liability. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Discussion direction, item 6C on IT services. Looks like Jeff or John, who's taking the lead?
John's going to go ahead and take the lead on this.
Thank you, John.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the board and public and staff. Unlike Jeff's presentation, I've been doing IT for quite a while, so I'm not going to give you a bunch of paperwork. I'm going to use the computer. What was being asked is to just give you a snapshot, a brief presentation of what's been happening with IT. I'm coming up actually on 20 years with the district and probably about 25. And you include the consulting I had done prior to actually being employed by the district. Where we come from back from 1999, we had a couple of servers here. Y2K was a big issue for those of you who recall the Y2K concerns of the year 2000. At that time, many clocks were only programmed for the last 2 years, so from 1980 to 1999, they worked great. And then there was a huge, we're going to fall off the cliff, defense systems won't work, cars will stop, et cetera, et cetera. The district at that time looked at the investment and needs of the district to say, okay, we need to move forward. We recognize that this is a responsibility of the district to move in a long-term fashion. And so at that time, they changed their accounting system. And today, we still use the same accounting system, newer versions, newer iterations, but it was a solid choice then, and it's been a very solid investment for the district over this time. The reason I bring that out is that the perspective I look at when we're talking about IT today and IT for the future, we're doing some short-term planning for what we need to move forward to the district. But my long-term perspective is decisions made today, just as some of the investment decisions you're making, affect the district for years and years to come. So we're going to be looking very seriously at where we're going to. And so I want to thank the board for the new offices we have here. Back in 1999 through about 2013, we had a wiring closet that had a sump pump in it to get the water out. We had servers in an office area, which, while they were semi-secure, it's moved forward a lot better. Today we have a dedicated server room that is alarmed. It is temperature controlled and temperature monitored, so that if the air conditioning fails, signal service actually dials out and lets us know that there's an issue and we need to address it right away. We went from 2 servers and about 30 computer systems for all the staff that we have in the office to today 6 servers, including 3 virtualized, as well as about 95 computers and laptops that are out there in the field and the office today. At that time, we also used multiple means of communications. Back in the 90s, we were still using paper faxes, pagers, as well as just calling people out. Today, we've advanced that. We have electronics, email, goes to your smartphone. We have the ability to text. We have the ability to take pictures and shoot them back out with messaging. However, we also still use faxes to get information out, and we still use pagers. Interestingly enough, pagers are a very redundant, but a very strong redundant form of communications from our infrastructure, both on the water and wastewater side. And I'm not advocating or recommending any disuse of the pagers. It actually is just a nice second tier, third tier level of support, because what we do, especially on the sewer side, is we can't have failure. And the field staff has done an excellent job, Oliver Terp and his crew, monitoring and maintaining our infrastructure to make sure that it doesn't break down on us. Current issues, as I said, we're still using paper faxes, and a fundamental means of paper faxes that are being used is for the work orders. We have 2 main sources of work orders that get out to the field for what we need to have our field staff repair or replace. Customer service will get calls from customers. We have 13,000 water and about 5,000 wastewater customers who are not bashful about trying to get a hold of us in any form or means, and I'm sure as directors you've probably even taken some of those calls personally. That is generated on the customer service side, but independently and separately, we also have the ability in the district for our operators who are running the plants to say, hey, this isn't working, or this should have to be fixed, or we need something here, and they can generate these work orders. But there's no cohesive management program that we have in the district to make that picture and to get that information out to our staff and for management to keep track of what's happening. They have regular meetings, but there's a lot of paper reporting with no backup to keep it in one place so you can do a trend analysis. Asset management. Accounting identifies an asset if it's $5,000 or more in asset cost. But anything under $5,000, we're not really tracking it as an asset. It's a cost of doing business at that year. However, you still have a lot of components that are out there, even under $5,000, that still need to have routine maintenance, routine checking, and federal and state requirements are increasing as far as reporting, and we have to make sure that we meet those requirements. The district's system maps, which are what we use to present to the field from engineering, are still done today on AutoCAD, which is a nice picture, a very accurate picture, but it's not geographically tied where you can go and do a search like you do on a property tax system, for example, at the county office through its GIS, to say, okay, I want to see how many pipes we have in this area, or how many valves we have in this area, or how many leaks have we had in this area. But that capability is becoming more and more prevalent, and there are companies out there today that do offer that as part of their asset management and work order services. So what I'm telling you is that there's a lot of work here yet to be done, even though we've moved forward quite a bit in the last 20 years. One other challenge that we have is our internet access. If you look at our county, we're 1,100 square miles. If we were the city of Fair Oaks and 20 square miles, or the city of Angels Camp and about 10 square miles, it wouldn't be a challenge. But just for Calaveras County, for us to have internet connectivity, we have to have a minimum of 5, and we actually inherited one of these Cal.net wireless down in Wallace. We have 6 independent and separate service providers for our internet. They don't talk to each other. The level of service and uptime is different and varied, and so that presents a challenge. However, it's getting better, and I will compliment Comcast in that in the last 5 years, their downtime has been reduced significantly. They used to be like a thoroughbred horse, so if it rained, it went down. But now they pretty much stay up, which is a nice thing because they are also the fastest in the county. Unfortunately, they don't serve the whole county.
Yeah.
And one of our critical areas is the Ebbets Pass region, which has both water and wastewater. And we have 3 facilities on HughesNet satellite because we cannot get AT&T DSL or Comcast service at those places. It's improving over time. We've made use of where things have changed. We were told the Hunter's Water Treatment Plant should be slated for AT&T, for Comcast cable in the next year. So we do maintain an active relationship with our providers to find out, okay, how can we improve it as time goes on? One thing I want to note that, and this is a historical perspective, AT&T DSL and Comcast cable really came into play in the last 10 years. Before that, it was all dial-up, and then it became DSL. The first DSL providers in Calaveras County were not AT&T, and the first high-speed internet was not Comcast. CalTel out of Copperopolis and Volcano provided DSL services before anybody else up here. So our local providers did try and stay on top of it. CalTel currently in Copperopolis is upgrading all fiber. And Saddle Creek's all rewired. I know they're working it out, the rest of Little John, and then they'll be heading back over to the other side of the lake as well. So looking forward, one of the goals that we have is to get field staff issued smartphones, and that was accomplished this year. That benefited the field staff for 2 reasons. One, it got everybody on the same playing field with technology. You didn't have some guys with flip phones, some guys not having the ability to get email out in the field, inabilities to take pictures. Our field staff is crucial in keeping this district working and working as smoothly as possible, and the ability to take a picture, annotate it, and message it out back to staff here at the office or to a key person on the field was critical, and that was accomplished this year. We're upgrading our field laptops to tablets. The tablets are more robust. They are easier to keep as far as not getting knocked around the trucks because they're a lot thinner. They can be placed in either on the dash and not fall off, and or they're a lot easier to use because they also have touchscreens. The other thing that we're working on is leveraging GIS. We've been working with engineering to determine the level of GIS capabilities we currently have. We have our modeling, our hydraulic modeling with a GIS foundation. However, our system maps are not tied to that. And so we're working on a project to bring those two together so we're not trying to duplicate efforts on keeping our system maps independent of our modeling maps. The modeling can be done accurately, but it's a bigger picture. It's not as detailed as a system map is needed. Finally, we want to talk about improved communications, and that's where we're going to get into the next recommendation here. We are looking to provide to our staff an integrated work order and asset management system. Faster communications between staff and field and between management in the field is critical. Sending out a fax to a facility and then calling a guy or texting a guy saying, okay, we just faxed you the work order, and requiring them to drive back to that facility to pick up the fax to get the details of what the work order is better than having to come down to the office, but it's not efficient for them out in the field because we have guys driving 20, 30, 40 miles sometimes up and down Ebbets Pass over a sheep ranch or down in Copperopolis or down in Jenny Lynn, and it takes time. And if we can make that, if we can reduce the amount of time they're spending trying to figure out what they need to get done, then they're making their time more efficient for everybody here. Proactive as well as reactive maintenance. Proactive is scheduled maintenance. When you get an asset, a fan, a motor, a pump, there are certain things you should need to do operationally over time. Independently of that as well, if you have this in a management system, you can do trend analysis. You can sit there and say, okay, we see that we're having to send out crews for repairs on this line or this set of motors. You can do trend analysis and do proactive maintenance rather than sitting there going back to the reactive which is simply when something breaks, be it a customer-driven issue or a field staff-driven issue. This results in better planning. If you can sit there and be more proactive and less reactive on your maintenance, you're using your assets better, they'll last longer. And lastly, if we can use GIS to put this together, then you can start really looking at your work order trends. Okay, we have 160 leaks over in Jenny Lind. Okay, is it an issue with the pipe that we used? Okay, maybe we need to start looking at a pipeline replacement project for distribution systems rather than just fixing pipes as people keep on calling in the leaks. We have to be realistic about it. We know we have some areas that are problematic. Is there a way of knowing what areas have been touched so many times? Right now, it's thumbing through papers to try and figure it out and count it out, and that's not efficient for anybody. And so we want to make that, we want to improve that. So what are our next steps? This is a multi-year project. This is not going to happen in a year, but what we are looking is bringing to the board in the future the continued best use of our current capabilities while making the improvements that we want to do. I want to personally say I appreciate the board's continued commitment to IT. We've done a few things over the last couple of years to try and make it as efficient as we can. We even brought an outside service to kind of back me up when I'm out of the office. And that's been somewhat helpful. Fortunately, we have, and I'll say this, we have a very good staff out there in the field and in the office. We don't get a lot of help and support calls here, and I'm fortunate I don't have to run around holding anybody's hand. We have a very competent staff here, and it's nice to have that perspective and know that I'm working with that kind of group. This is a multi-year project for full implementation, as I said, but it takes also adequate staff to maintain. Over the years, we've gone through 4 different, that I recall, asset management work order systems. When I came on board, we had a company called Sussex, which was bought by Acela back in the 90s. And then it was transitioned to another company that Mr. Purley had found. We used them for a few years, and then we brought into Almax and Antero, which we still use today for a subset of ours. And then we also brought in a company called SEMS, S-E-M-S, which initially was there for doing compliance reports for our water facilities, and they got into asset and work order management when we're looking at them. But the overall goal is to look at what is currently available. We have found that, unlike 15, 20 years ago, a centralized hosted solution is probably better because of how far spread out we are. When I have 6 different internet providers to get communications out to all our field, it's very difficult to sit there and say, you guys need to all use your internet to come and hit San Andreas here and work off of a server application here. It doesn't work that well, and they don't have a solution today that works well to do that. Fortunately, as we were seeing, there's more stuff in what they call the cloud today, and we're now looking at some integrated work order asset management systems that would be hosted in the cloud. As with Springbrook, though, once you make that choice, you're pretty much married into that company. So we're doing a robust search of what is out there. We're engaging our field staff to find out when they go to conferences what other agencies are using. We're not looking to reinvent the wheel or do all the research. These guys are getting tools out there in the field when they go on their conferences and say, hey, look, we can do this. That's sometimes the best recommendation for a company because they can see it works or doesn't work. And those guys are not shy about sharing what does or doesn't work when they're together at those conferences. So again, I guess the main thing I want to have your support on is that we are going to move forward into an integrated work order asset management system, and it will require commitment by the board to make this happen. Lastly, and I want to thank Calaveras County's staff. 20 years ago, we embarked on what was called a GIS MOU that was signed off by our board, the City of Angels, the Calaveras Council of Governments, Transportation Agency, and Calaveras County. It was a GIS collaborative effort. GIS at that time was in its infancy for government agencies. We collaborated with them on aerial imagery. We collaborated with them on the parcel layer to get all the parcels out of our engineering department, and we saved tens of thousands of dollars to the county by making use of our engineering parcel layers at that time. We ended up only having to invest $5,000, I believe, back in 1999, 2000, to get aerial imagery of the county. That cost about $100,000, and the county, the COG, and the city picked up the shared cost. We were successful with the vendor to have a governmental MOU be the source document for them to market this aerial imagery to us, and each individual agency didn't have to pay uniquely. We were able to make it a collaborative effort. We have worked, Calaveras County Water District has worked very successfully with the Calaveras County Technology Services Department, and we've been able to maintain that relationship, that technological relationship, and we still today have access inside their network to get to their megabyte system for assessor data. Our high-speed internet actually comes through a modem we have over at the Sheriff's Tower and comes through wirelessly to us here because we don't have Comcast at this building yet. They've been very good to work with us. As time has gone on, that has been a historic GIS MOU. We want to transition it to a technology MOU. And that way that as staff has changed, new department heads have come into play, they recognize still at the county that the collaborative efforts that we can make as governmental organizations will benefit all our constituents because they're the same folks. We serve the same people the county does. And so I'm happy to report that Tim Lutz of the county, Amber Collins of the Calaveras Council of Governments, Melissa Eads of the City of Angels, and Stan Thorpe of the Calaveras County Technology Services Director are all interested in seeing this technology MOU get off the ground. We have polished it. It's been transitioned, I believe, to both Dave and Jeff, or Jeff is going to get it to Dave, so that we can move this forward. And all agencies are interested in seeing this continue, that collaborative effort, so that all of us are working together rather than uniquely and independently and at more cost. So I do want to thank our partner governmental agencies. That concludes my brief presentation. I hope
Wow.
I hope I didn't have to give you a lot of pages to thumb through here.
No, oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I just have a couple of questions.
Okay.
You personally, I mean, how are you keeping up with what's the latest discovery, or, you know, what would work best for CCWD? I mean, are you going to sessions? Are you on a good mailing list, or?
That's a great question. I've been really blessed. I chose this profession years ago because I wanted to be challenged. I didn't realize how challenged I would be on a continuing basis, but it's one where it doesn't sit still. Technology is constantly changing.
Right.
Years ago, my emphasis when I had my computer store was serving businesses. And as a result of that foundation, I've always advocated being on the leading edge, but not the bleeding edge of technology. And there are
Yeah.
companies that'll get you stuck out there, and they'll have you be their beta tester. I don't want to put the district in that position. Having said that, I certainly go to sessions and conferences, but also I listen to our staff. A lot of what I do is support more than saying this is what you will do. I find that working collaboratively, even with our own staff, saying, okay, what have you found? What do you need? What are your needs? What have you heard when you went to your latest conference? We have a couple smaller tools where we have the ability for one of our collections crews or distribution crews, where on their phones they can keep track of just what our to-do list is, but it's shared amongst 3 guys on their phones. So they could actually be addressing 2 different issues and see what the other guy's doing because he typed it up on his phone, a current status. One of the newer uses of our smartphones helps improve efficiencies. They're not having to call each other or tie each other back on the radio. However, if you listen to what people are asking you, and then you can do the research. I've done this long enough that if they ask me a question, I can sometimes interpret it as to what a computer guy or a computer company may have been putting out and how they would verbiage it. But as far as being the sole individual that says, okay, this is where we're going to go, that's not my role. My role is here to be a team player, to encourage and support the district in its move forward, and to listen and work collaboratively with our staff to make sure we get the best product possible for the district. That's where I see the strength is that we have a really good staff.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, it's great to hear that we've got a new process in place on our work order, so that we're looking away from the faxes and running back to the shop to get the work order. And anything that could be put in place to reduce that the time spent and make us more efficient. And I like the idea of going to tablets and smartphones. That is and hopefully things will continue moving forward. And I look forward to, or we look forward to receiving your next recommendation on what is going to be helping the district. Thank you, John. Any other questions for?
No, thank you,
Okay.
John.
Thanks, John.
Mr. President, with it, just for the next item on the agenda, I know, Director Strange, I think you have some time constraints, and I want to make sure we cover the HCP while you're here. It may be
Okay.
beneficial just to move that. Sorry, Bob, I know you're anxious to get going, but it might be a good idea to move that item up
Thank you.
now.
Yeah,
If you're okay with that.
Okay.
my son's gonna get dropped off here and then I gotta go. I'm teaching a night class, I tell you.
No,
At Delta College, yeah, it's a 6 o'clock night class. so-
down in Stockton.
Yeah, down on campus
Okay.
in Stockton.
I just want to make sure that AC doesn't kick back on again.
So we're no longer
Yeah, no kidding.
using pigeons for notes and stuff anymore, huh? That's the old joke.
All right, so I just wanted to provide the board with a brief update because there are going to be multiple actions being taken on pretty shortly here with regard to the Calaveras Habitat Conservation Plan. I tried to, briefly catch everyone up to speed on how things are going and what the process is within the memo. I also took a stab at trying to break the record for the most acronyms in the memo, so that too. So, but this is all very complex. But just generally, the purpose of the Calaveras Habitat Conservation Plan, it basically allows for Stockton East Water District and the Calaveras County Water District, I guess we'll call it the districts here, to comply with the Endangered Species Act, and specifically protecting and managing those fishery resources and habitat while maintaining, reliable water supplies through our operations to our constituents. And essentially, the water agencies on the Calaveras River are seeking a 50-year incidental take permit. Just what is an incidental take permit? We'll get into that a little bit. But for their operations and associated activities that may affect endangered anadromous fish, that may or utilize or may utilize the Calaveras River for habitat and also their migration as well. So there are two protected species that are in here. Omicus, which is rainbow trout, or Central Valley steelhead. It's a very specific subspecies of trout. The Central Valley species is an endangered species that is protected. And, I won't attempt the scientific name for this one.
Shasha.
Shasha, okay, thanks. Which is Chinook salmon, which they can actually come and migrate into the Calaveras River from time to time. They're not there every single year, but they do utilize that river, and it's known that they can take advantage of that during various times of the year. Actually, there's multiple runs and periods where they could actually enter the lower portion of the Calaveras River. So, very important species. The Habitat Conservation Plan essentially has biological goals and a set of objectives associated with those goals. And so those biological goals will be implemented through sort of operational criteria and certain conditions in the Habitat Conservation Plan that will be instituted by the agencies. And there's really two biological goals, and those are, maintaining a viable population of rainbow trout and Central Valley steelhead. I think the difference between rainbow trout and steelhead is rainbow trout don't ever actually go back to the ocean, so they do kind of hang out in fresh water their whole lives. And then also maintaining adequate habitat conditions above the lower reaches of the Calaveras River at Belota for fall, late fall, spring, or winter run Chinook salmon. So the project area is pretty much from below Hogan Dam down to the lower reaches of the Calaveras River, which includes sort of the old Calaveras River, so obviously downstream it's been sort of changed over time, and then also Mormon Slough, which it breaks down, so there's sort of like a headworks below outside of Calaveras County where it kind of splits off into different delivery areas within Stockton East district area, and so they have a lot of different operations and things that they do in order to assure deliveries to their ag customers, mostly downstream, and then also they have some wholesale municipal customers that they take quite a bit of water down to the lower portion of the river. So just specifically, I wanted to highlight what this means for CCWD. The permit will cover the impacts associated with, and by those impacts, you'll hear the word take a lot. the impacts to any of these species and for the existing and the future use of Jenny Lind Water Treatment Plant. So that includes some expansion that has been contemplated in the draft Habitat Conservation Plan right now, and any other modifications. So we have a series of subsurface intakes that are in the river below New Hogan Dam, I guess it's about less than about a quarter mile. It's not very far down. And then it also provide coverage for private diversions downstream New Hogan within Calaveras County that currently receive project water. So we do have, as you know, a series of agricultural diverters downstream within the county that have straws in the river, and their activities would be covered under this as well. And then also any future ones as well. So there's conditions set on future diversions associated with this habitat conservation plan. So.
Excuse me, those people who are taking off the river, those are the ones that come into our meetings every once in a while and
Sure, yeah, they check in with us every once in a while. Yeah, so yeah, we essentially provide them services by maintaining the storage supplies in New Hogan under contract with the federal government, and they are allowed to essentially be conveyed that water
right.
To meet their needs. So, yeah, and
It's not a big amount, it's just the fact that they need
Yeah.
permission to do that.
I think we're up to 10 now. So,
Oh, are we?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Peter, did you talk with them, with the recent increase in rates to them? Did you explain to them what was going on here with HCP and possibly our additional costs, as I'm sure we'll have to address with that HCP? And my only question with that is do we need to consider possibly even having to move those rates up a little higher to meet our HCP costs?
So yes, the answer is yes. When we were going through the rate increase, we did have some consultation with them regarding that, and took that into consideration in addition to our significant increases in O&M costs that we've had for New Hogan.
Yeah.
So that was all spelled out to them, in addition to the fact that we don't really gain much revenue from them. However, it does supply water to a large population down in the vicinity of Valley Springs, so there's some consideration to our municipal customers as well, so there's costs. But yes, they're very aware of this. We've started to make some outreach with them about some of the considerations maybe in the future if they want to expand their operations, and also the impacts that they need to consider if they're going to do that, including fish screens and things like that as well. So they know this is going on, and that this is a significant burden and cost that the districts are taking on as well.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it was important that we brought them all in, and we don't always have a lot of communication with those folks, other than just kind of them letting us know what their plans are for the year, but it's good, and I think actually it was worthwhile exercise.
Yeah, and in tandem with that, I would just add that as part of that communication, that outreach, it was communicated that there's a benefit being provided to them as well, that their diversions are covered under the permit. So they receive the benefit of coverage under the permit for any endangered species action related to their water use, so which is significant, which is a significant benefit.
Of course, they want to know what's in it for me,
Why not?
right?
So, as I mentioned, that this permit would provide, coverage for existing operations at Jenny Lind, subsurface intakes, and then also expansion that could go further upstream. We kind of discussed the possibility of ramping up to 18 MGD over time as a maximum amount over 50 years. It's currently sitting at 5, or I think actually it's up to 6 MGD right now. So basically a tripling of that diversion there. So. And then also the riparian diverters. Sorry, I didn't have a better map, but there are diverters within the county here that kind of are within these riparian lands up to the county line, and they will also be able to be provided protection as well. So the next steps, kind of highlighted in the memo, is that there's sort of an internal review at National Marine Fisheries Service, which we talked about, and it'll be published in the Federal Register for 45 days. Within that time frame, we've kind of committed to having a public workshop with Stockton East, kind of laying out what the HCP is, and some other things as well. And then to come back to you at some point and finalize sort of a future cost share and the operations agreement between the two districts, which has to be kind of contemplated separately from the HCP, and that's just how we're going to work between us. So I will come back at the next meeting and we will talk a little bit about the application process and perhaps get direction from the board on submitting that application to NIMS, or excuse me, National Marine Fisheries Service. And so that's the next step that should kind of kick this off. So there's also about, as I mentioned, there's about a 4 to 6 week internal review period that could take place as well. So, and then if you have any serious technical questions, Dave Cameron has been working on this longer than I have, actually, since I came on, and he's very familiar and has been representing the district on that effort as well. So.
Well, I look forward to our next workshop coming up later this month and more intimate details of the HCP. And again, for those in the public, the real unique thing about this is the first one in California, an aquatic habitat HCP to be agreed upon. So that's pretty groundbreaking.
Looking forward to October 24th to hear more about this, Peter. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey, Dave, before we start this, can we get the air conditioning adjusted? We're like Bob
I had
walked
to pick
in.
something, it was set at 76, so I.
Are you cold or hot?
Well, I think in looking at the rest of the people in the room,
Freezing.
it's like a meat locker.
Can we take a break?
Let's take a quick break.
Yeah.
5-minute break.
Yeah.
Back in session.
You still,
Poor Bob. Oh.
Many of you might have been expecting a presentation by Carl Bridget with PDI. I unfortunately suffered a rather debilitating back strain on Thursday, or actually Wednesday, and I missed Thursday and Friday. And that was, of course, the deadline for this master plan, and then Monday was a holiday for the district. So it wasn't until Tuesday that we kind of regathered, and there were some communications issues between myself and Carl, and then I consulted with Charles about this presentation. And since our hope is that after receiving the draft presentation, I should probably be speaking in the speaker, I do this a lot. After receiving the draft presentation from Carl just 3 or 4 weeks ago, I believe, and having fairly minor comments from the directors and then none from the public, that we could just move forward with an abbreviated presentation, and then in that case, I was going to make the presentation. It has come to my knowledge, or I've been made aware of the fact that there might be some formatting or spelling errors in the document, of which, because of the short time frame I had to put the presentation together, I had to strip the tables that you have in front of you directly from the Adobe PDF files. Those are not the ones in the presentation, which I corrected. So there you go. So once again, the pretty aerial view of Copper Cup.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion?
No, well, again, I just wanted to go over quickly over just the, what are the summary of the recommended improvements. And it's titled CIP, but if you looked at the projects, some of them are really rehabilitation projects. There are 2 sets of projects that are within the first 10 years, and then the annual replacement program is shown as a year 11 to 15 onwards. So those are the numbers you'll see. Timeline, costs, and then questions and ask for adoption. This is the table from your report. There are essentially just 9 projects that are listed in priority. They are the replacement of the clear well, or rehabilitation of the clear well, the replacement of the redwood tank at the B tank site, the rehabilitation of the existing steel tank at the B tank site. The transmission main from our treatment plant to tank 1 that goes along the property of Saddle Creek. When this project started, the master plan started, I was not aware that the district had already started a design effort a number of years ago on that project. That's the priority 4, and then there are 2 additional projects, one of which is a secondary main that supplies water to the general Poker Flats area or the properties east of the lake that don't go under the lake. And that's the B4 backup main project, and then there's the C4 loop project, which is another pipeline from one zone, the B1 zone to the C4 zone. Finally, improvements to the existing Copperopolis pump station, and then you'll see I put asterisks next to number 8 and 9. Those are the annual programs, which again, the report shows starting in year 11 onward. I kind of reformatted what you see and what was presented in the report. This was a little bit more clear to me. I just simply listed the projects that are recommended in the master plan as priority projects 1 through 4, which are years, the first 5 years, starting next year, 19 through 23, which again is the clear well, the 2 projects, which is the rehab and the new tank at the B site, and then the pump station, pipeline, and PRV that are all the 3rd project. And then
Excuse me, why wouldn't we want to, I remember when we've had discussions about that pipe running under the lake. Why wouldn't we want to do that? Yeah.
Oh, we do, and but that's on the sewer side.
Okay.
For sure.
I'm sorry.
That we absolutely, that's.
And that'll be on the
horizon.
second slide, and I can
Oh, okay.
explain
Sorry.
what our concerns, engineering's concerns, and operations concerns. If I can just jump to the second slide,
Yeah.
since there's a diagram or map on the right side of the diagram. The concern is that we have no ability to deliver drinking water to the customers on the opposite side of the lake should there be a disruption of that line. There should be some secondary supply system to those customers. And I would presume that if we did have a failure in the line that's under the lake, it's going to be problematic for us to repair that quickly. So it could be quite significant. In other words, it's both a high impact, maybe not high risk, but it's certainly a high impact if there was a failure.
But you're talking water line,
Yes, the water line.
Yeah,
not the sewer.
And I apologize, we have water and sewer
Well,
projects.
yeah,
The sewer obviously is probably the most, the riskiest in having that
And the line
in
is very high
operation. But
pressure.
this is, for system reliability, this is a big challenge to continue to operate in this manner on the water side.
The master plan that you saw earlier on the wastewater side shows a new force main along this alignment, which is the alignment from our lower cross-country to our upper cross-country pump stations. The district has a 50-foot easement through this, or right-of-way, through this property. And I suspect that you would want to build this project as well as the force main at the same time, as I would have to imagine it's not, well, the engineering is significant, but the environmental, I mean, we're going to have a challenge with the environmental documents. You might as well do both projects simultaneously, as they're going to be in the, adjacent to each other. So those are that is the project I just described, and then there's the Copperopolis pump station, which there's some narrative in the master plan about the condition of the equipment and its need for rehabilitation replacement. This is the next 5-year trend, 24 to 28. Then the final project, which as management and as the board wouldn't certainly be against my recommendation is say that, well, that's technically supposed to be implemented every single year, starting immediately, or have always occurred. In this particular case, these costs of these programs have been put in your master plan starting after the 10th year or the beginning of the 11th year. So this is the table with no spelling error that shows the first 5 years of recommended capital improvement projects / rehabilitation replacement projects, which is the clear well, the replacement tank at the B site, the rehabilitation of the tank at B site, and then the components that make up the transmission main that'll go around the B tank to the C tank, and the elements that need to be constructed as part of that. And that's approximately $10.5 million in today's dollars. The second half of this is the year 6 through 10, which is these remaining 3 projects, which are the backup main project, the loop project, and the improvements to the Copperopolis pump station for a tidy $5.2 million approximately. And the last bit, which is quite costly because these numbers are primarily based upon our asset value, show 5 years of funding for both replacement of approximately 1% of our distribution system pipelines, and then the miscellaneous projects that were identified in the report, which I have a table that breaks those numbers, or breaks those projects descriptions down following this one. That over 5 years is another $22 million, or 6.5 approximately in 1 year. For your information, for your tables, the project descriptions are reversed. You'll notice on the slide you have here, which I will happily furnish you after this meeting, the project recommended improvements description, they're reversed. So the $418,000 applies to the annual rehabilitation and replacement program, and the pipeline is the $875,000, which is a lot. So this is the table that references the first row on the previous table, which is improvements related to maintaining the life cycle of the water treatment plant, the raw water pump station, the C tank site, the Copperopolis pump station, the B tanks. Oh, well, the C tank pump station is not that large, so. And then the Copperopolis tank. So their value, present worth value, has been estimated and then divided by the number of years of a typical life cycle of those assets. So that 418 is the one you see on the previous table. And with that, I have, I can answer any questions as best I can. As you know, I can always say, I'll have to get back with you and ask our consultant.
I just have one small question. Why are we putting a 20-inch pipe?
We are, where would that be?
It was on one of your, I mean, you're expecting a big growth down in Copperopolis?
C1 and Saddle Creek Transmission Main Project, 20-inch pipe, almost 12,000 feet of it.
That's what their values are. That does seem high. I can certainly get back with you and ask, I can get clarification on that.
Russ wants 20-inch pipe.
That is
Perfectly.
unusually large, and I would not expect that to have been the case. It's not, the district does not operate any 20-inch lines other than in some very, very, unique situations where it's 100 feet or 50 feet and there's some unusual thing.
Do you want me to speak?
Yes, oh, excellent, yeah. That's the person.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's the primary transmission main coming out of the water plant, going down, is that Little John? So, yeah, that's the major conveyance that's supplying pretty much the whole Copperopolis area. So, yeah, it could be 20 or 24 inches, something like that.
The raw water line is 18 or 20 from a raw water pump station, existing one to the water treatment plant. So
Do we have the same thing?
In
Up the
Evans
hill?
Pass?
Huh?
We're in Evans Pass service area? Yeah, I mean,
Oh,
okay. See, the one that runs along Moran Road, I think it's 16 or 18 inch.
Oh, okay.
So.
Well, I
yeah.
guess it wouldn't want for us to
And
have.
we'll be seeing a similar project down in Jenny Lynn from that A to B transmission line area.
Okay.
We're gonna start to have some larger core transmission mains, so.
Okay, I just had never heard of a 20-inch.
Russ is pulling a William Mulholland equivalent.
I toured a plant last Thursday where their distribution is it's a 14-foot by 14-foot rectangular.
You're referring to Department of Water and Power's facility?
No, that's the water treatment plant at Laverne.
Oh, Laverne, that's Met Water.
Weymouth. So this is small potatoes here, 20-inch
That's
diameter.
the Jensen plant, or Weymouth plant.
Weymouth.
I have an advantage, I went to California for a moment. That was the plant you toured when you were in college. So I've actually been there several times and actually did a couple of projects there, so I'm very familiar.
I went to college within 3/4 of a mile of there and didn't even know it was there.
Laverne or Plymouth?
Laverne.
Okay.
I was there for a short period of time.
Okay, this is an action item. Where did you go to college, Bertha? We're looking for a, do we have any further discussion, any questions for?
Well, Bob started off by saying that he had made some corrections and stuff, but on this consultant's report where he's talking about the build-out is projected to occur in the year 2,300, is that?
That is, I believe, an accurate number, because if you look at the growth numbers that were given to us, that are consistent with the urban water management plan. I do that, maybe I should say, oops, now I really do. The numbers that are in the urban water management plan just have no, or correspondingly, the ones that are developed by the California Department of Finance, they honestly don't look past 50 years, but the numbers that we have are something around 2% every 5 years. Well, that's a fraction of a percent per year, and if we are to get to this build-out number at that rate, it's going to take over 200 years. So yes, I don't doubt that number's correct. It's sort of superfluous in the sense that we don't know. It's just, maybe we can certainly remove it from the text and just merely state that it's beyond the planning horizon of this document, if that would be acceptable.
Well, we currently have, I can't remember, 2,800 connections or something in the Copper Office area?
Yes, I think that might be, okay, I'll have to check exactly. You've added quite a
You
few.
probably won't be on the board still. then.
Yeah, I'm gonna be running for re-election in that year. But,
Well, certainly, basically the numbers that we had are, and again, I'm quite happy to say that I will ask the consultant to simply revise the language in that sentence to say that, you know, the projected build-out is beyond 30 years, given the
Just so
rate.
long as it's consistent with the language we've used in the other master plans, Bob. I would just caution that let's be consistent, because this is one of a number of ones that we've done. Yeah.
That's not what you're asking, is it?
well, it just seems, he used the word superfluous, but it's a.
It's a long, long way away.
To go from, call it 2,800, 3,000 connections to 6,800 connections, it is just for me to think that it would take another 200 years to do that. But,
Yeah.
The way that the planners would say is that if it, as a county-wide, as a community, the county's population would, but we're really talking about things that are beyond any control of any planner or myself or anyone else to really predict what changes will occur. And I certainly want to reinforce that changes in technology or changes in legislation that we're getting from California are going to greatly impact any planning that I can make or any engineer can make because they can force actions or requirements that simply are beyond my control and we'll have to address at that time.
Well, we'll have a BART station there before that.
So we're looking for the adoption of the final Copper Cove Water System Master Plan.
I'm conflicted about approving it because I think that there's gaps in this. I see for sale signs on property that I know that in years past had a massive amount of houses that were anticipated to go in on them. There's a Copper Valley Ranch project that Castle and Cook they're still pushing to get that done. Those houses, those potential houses aren't recognized in here. So I don't know, I'll move to approve it, but I maintain the right to revise it.
I'd like to make a motion then that we accept the Copperopolis, I hear what you're saying. The water system master plan.
I think we already have a motion.
Well, no, I don't think he was making a motion.
I will accept your motion and I'll second your motion, but, okay.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Any public comment? Rebecca, will you take a roll?
Director Strange?
Yes.
Director Thomas?
Yes.
Director Underhill?
Yes.
President Cronin?
Yes.
I
Thank you.
will just ask complete my presentation with one final comment. All of these efforts, these master plans, it would be quite helpful if we actually had a general plan that was adopted that
Yeah.
we could use as a document. Otherwise, I'm really fishing in the dark.
Thank you.
Catch the most fish in the dark.
Okay, we're moving on to item 6F, discussion action regarding an approval of an exception to district policy regarding termination of services for one of the two wastewater services at 1141 Sequoia Street in Arnold. Stacy, thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm here today to present a request from a member of the public, Mr. and Mrs. Coco, who live at 1141 Sequoia Street in Arnold. There's some extenuating circumstances that have happened with that project, or that property rather, over the last few years. It was at one time listed with the county as having 2 units. It is now listed as a 1-unit property with a single-family home on that property as well. However, there exists 2 sewer connections on that property and just 1 water connection. Between our files and the county files, we have no indication as to why there were 2 sewer connections added to that property. Furthermore, the county has updated their files to reflect 1 building on a single-family residence on the property. Therefore, the owners of this property are requesting that they terminate one of their wastewater services. And we found that based on our resolution of 2002-86, that resolution does not apply because that only applies to construction standards and fee waivers. This would be a removal of a wastewater connection, and if anybody were to request another connection there, they would have to pay the current capacity charges at that time, and there would be no refund of money to the current owners of that property.
But my only question, you said, how much research has been done to figure out why there was 2 there in the first place? Is it a split parcel? Is it a large parcel?
So it's actually 2 parcels that the county considers as one. One of the parcels is under 0.01 acres and is unbuildable. So the county considers it as one parcel. When you look at the assessor's information, it has a value of, I think, like $2.
Okay.
And from my conversations with the assessor's office is that they consider that unbuildable, and that's why the $2 value is provided for that little triangle of property.
So in our records, was there ever a reason why there was two connections?
I cannot,
Did someone ever, and someone paid for it at some point, possibly?
somebody paid for two separate connections. There is a foundation on the property.
On the little piece of property?
On the, no,
Oh.
on the, just the larger piece of property. There is a foundation there. We have no record of knowing if anything was built there or not, and neither does the county. The thoughts are that something was there and may have been demolished, and then somebody just wanted a larger house, because it's a pretty small footprint. And somebody must have wanted a larger house and just moved to the side and created the single-family dwelling home.
Well, it sounds reasonable what you're asking and proposing.
And, yeah, and if you're here long enough, you'll remember, or some people might remember, the fact that this particular thing came before the board one other time. Because, you know, it was just that little thing, and they couldn't get it fixed. Another owner prior to the Cocos brought it to the board, and I'm sorry there wasn't any documentation or anything, but I have heard about this one before. So
Okay.
I'm really glad to
The-
go ahead.
Yeah, this came to the
Engineering,
engineering
yeah,
committee.
yeah.
And it's crystal clear to me that we need to do this, so I'm prepared to make a motion on this unless somebody in the audience will. Well, I'll make the motion anyway. Okay, I've moved that we adopt this resolution authorizing the termination of service for the small parcel.
And also go ahead and second that.
Okay, and this motion is just for this piece of property, this property identified by street address and parcel number. Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, Rebecca, will you take roll?
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and the last item on our new business agenda is 6G, discussion action authorizing contract amendment for archaeological services, Jenny Lind Water Plant Pretreatment Project.
Can I tell you that I have to leave in 1 minute?
Dave Hagerton,
Thank you,
General
Mr.
Manager.
Mr. President, members of the board, and I appreciate that, and I thank you, Charles, for letting me step in on this one. I know you were looking forward to this. So this is one, I just want to assure you that, asking for an increase in a contract that's already underway being performed is, it's not something we do unless we absolutely have to, and certainly not in this amount, and bringing it to the board. Something I learned really early in my career in a public agency is that change orders are not generally not seen as a positive thing, and you only do it if you absolutely have to. I am convinced that this is one that we have to do because of circumstances, unfortunately, that are beyond our control. But I do believe that our staff, and particularly Charles, have done an excellent job in trying to mitigate our exposure to liability, potential extra costs, given the circumstances we're dealing with down at Jenny Lind. And really that's, it's trying to construct a project like this with a pretreatment, with earthwork, in an area that's a listed cultural resource site. It's actually, recognized and listed with the state, makes it awfully challenging to do this kind of project. And we initially hired Garcia & Associates Gonda to do some of the preliminary analysis, particularly under CEQA, related to those archaeological resources. And we had a much smaller scope of work and much smaller budget for that. But given the fact that this project is 75% funded by the federal government through FEMA, And Cal OES is also directly involved, and we have to work through both of those state and federal agencies. This really became something that we had to respond to what they required and what they called for, and the cultural resource issues have become much larger and more impactful than we had anticipated, and that's because of the decisions they've made. First of all, that was the NEPA analysis, and that took a lot of extra time to get through that. But you know, these are important issues, and it had to be addressed. And again, as a listed site, this is something that they were meeting what they deemed to be the requirements under the laws. So we were responding to that, and we had to have cultural resource professional services available to us to help us through that as well, to make sure we could be responsive as they move through that. Unfortunately, it became more complicated when we actually did encounter the archaeological resources, the cultural resources, artifacts during construction, and certainly that made it, you know, a lot of things that were simply hypothetical became reality, and the response was, well, the fact that as a result of that, FEMA then made its decision that it had to stop the project, stop construction, so that there could be an action plan put into place to actually move forward in the remainder of construction, and how we would deal with if we encountered any other archaeological artifacts on the site. So that's what we have relied upon Gonda to help us with that, because getting through that process could have, it did delay the project for a period of a number of weeks, but it could have been a much more, a lengthier and expensive delay had that not gone as smoothly as it did, and then largely that was because of the hard work of Charles and our consultant. The fact that we were able to gain concurrence with the tribe, with FEMA, with Cal OES, and with the State Historic Preservation Office to gain concurrence on this plan of how to deal with this, the archaeological treatment plan. So, bottom line, at the end of the day, to continue the construction and finish this project, we've had to incur additional costs to have archaeologists on site as required under this plan. And again, this is a plan, you know, that is owned and directed by state and federal agencies that we simply have no choice but to have to be responsive to. This is obviously a very expensive proposition to have professional archaeologists on site throughout the construction. And so that's why you're seeing this request today with a significant increase in cost on the project. So we're asking for an increase of what we have to date of all work performed of about $160,000 to increase that to just under $300,000, $299,995. Just to note, as we discussed at our last board meeting, we are aggressively pursuing grant funds to pay for this additional work. Just like the remainder of the project, we are trying to get the 75% federal match to cover these additional costs. Cal OES and our liaison there has been great. I'd like to recognize him. Charles and Andrew? Andrew Gillings, the representative of Cal OES that we work directly with, has been fantastic and approached us and said, hey, there's other funds available. You've got to compete for them, but you got a really good shot at it. Put your application in. And so thanks to the board, we moved quickly and called a special meeting to do that. So again, I think we've got an excellent shot to capture 75% of this through federal funds, but we'll have to wait on a final decision. Lastly, again, you know, these costs I do believe are necessary for us to, they are to get through the project, but I think if we look at it, the greatest risk for us and any public agency would be the extra cost on construction. I mean, certainly to keep the contractor with labor and equipment on hold you know, while we work through these issues. Had we not had this plan in place as quickly as we did and see it through as we're required to, that really is the big exposure for us that could easily end up in a claims and litigation and a very expensive resolution. So that's what staff has worked hard to do to avoid. And this is making the best of a tough situation, but I'm proud of the work our staff has done in managing this, and have maintained excellent relationships, as I've seen firsthand, with the state and federal agencies to get this through as quickly as possible. And with that, I'll ask if you have any questions.
For this, well, okay. how can we plan in the future? Because, you know, here in Calaveras County, I mean, there are these sort of digs all the time. And so how do we
Well, and
anticipate?
you're
How do we
exactly right. You're exactly right, Director Arnell. I mean, as we just saw with the Baster Plan, I mean, how many miles of pipeline, underground utility, are we looking to replace? You know, it's something that I think this site is particularly challenging because it is a listed site, and you know, I think it poses even more challenges than most areas that we would be working in. But I do absolutely believe that there are lessons we've learned from this that can be applied. You know, I think there's some things that we that we need to do. One of which I think we need to have an on-call archaeologist within our on-call consultant list, and to make sure that we have more resources, excuse me, in place to be able to respond to and to try to anticipate it. You know, things that can come. To be ready for it. I think maybe the plan of attack on some of these projects, we need to be maybe even more conservative in trying to estimate what the potential things that could be encountered, how would we deal with them, do we have all the resources, the archaeological resources under contract available to us, ready to go if something were to happen. You know, I talked to Director Strange about this yesterday, and I think for one thing it would be great for us to really find out what all the resources are available to us for this type of service.
Right.
You know, I mean, Gonda's a highly professional firm, but the reality is they are based out of, I believe, the North Bay. It is more expensive proposition for them to be on site and do their work. So is there an opportunity to utilize contractors that are closer to where we work, that we can utilize for you know, the vast majority of the things that we encounter?
I would think that even approaching the tribes, you know, themselves, just, you know.
Yeah, and that's a great point, and that was in large part why we did utilize Gonda on this, is because of the relationship with the tribe, which is a key part of that. But for other resources, yeah, for other firms, and yeah, I think that's yeah. I mean, there's, you know, this is a, you know, it's like any other discipline we hire for. We need to really evaluate any and all options for this.
On the previous item that Peter was talking about, on the HCP and the possibility of increasing the intake for the water treatment there by a factor of 3 times.
Yep.
I mean, that in and of itself dictates that we would take a larger footprint on that side, I would think. And we have to look at that very carefully.
That is a great point. Yeah, that is a great point, Director Thomas. That is a project, that is one, probably more than anything of the lessons learned is the approach to that project, which I'm estimating will be the next probably large capital project on site. It's really got to be, this has got to be one of the main things, I think, considered at the beginning, any and all options. And really, I mean, there are different ways to approach this, and I know, you know, I've been approached in the last number of months. One of the conferences I was at, I talked to a consultant who has archaeological services, and I was talking to them about their approach to this kind of issue, and there are different strategies to do it, and I think there may be a different way to make a run at it that can better position us, knowing what we know about the site. I mean, it should be no surprise, right, that this is going to be a challenge.
A multi-storied facility instead of grounds.
Okay,
But, you know, at the end of the day, I just want to remind everybody that this is a great project. It's an important project to deal with the aftermath of the Butte fire, and to get the 75% funds for what we've gotten to date has been a real success. So I think that this is one we'll hold up as a real success when we get through with it. It's just working through this is the challenge.
Okay, the Cal OES grant that they're offering to pay 75%, right now, this additional amount isn't included in that, in the full amount. And how successful do we anticipate we're going to be with dealing with Cal OES to get them to include this? Is that a difficult process?
Well, it's one that we've proven we can be successful at. I mean, there's certainly, you know, with this project, with our tank replacement projects, we've got a good track record with them. And I think the fact that they reached out to us, that Andrew contacted us and said, look, there are available funds. Clearly, you've got extra cost, you know, and he's been there right there with us as we've gone through this. So I think we've got an excellent chance. There's no guarantee. It is a competitive process, and there will be other agencies that will be seeking funds as well. But again, we have, I think we've got an excellent opportunity here.
So all this money is already, or it looks like from the dates on the little chart that's put together on page 2, that all of these funds have already been
Appropriated or budgeted.
have already been spent, the time and the money has already gone into, every one of these dates is in the past. But the other one, the only remaining, and it specifically says in the report, looks like that Charles prepared, is that including all past, the $299,995 to cover all work through the end of this year. But it does also, says right before that, including all past and future work. So it's kind of confusing. Is it including all work for just the year 2018? And if this project goes into January, February 19, could be additional funds that are coming out of this? Or is it $65,000 really include all past and future work?
This is anticipated to cover any and all work through the remainder of the project, so including any work that would be necessary in 2019.
Well, it doesn't say the remainder of the project, it says the remainder of the year.
And to provide additional contingency should additional services be necessary thereafter. So if you look here, the entry, as you look at that scope of work matrix, there's an entry for 74,996 for construction monitoring during October and November. So, Charles, that would be my understanding that, obviously we're going to hit a point at some time in the near future where weather is not going to allow for continued, earthwork on site. But this would be the funds to complete the work or to continue the work that can be done through this construction season, through this calendar year. But then that's why the $65,000 in contingency, and again, this is not, typically, this is not a fun thing to present because we normally would like to nail down these numbers and say these are the exact number of days, this is the exact cost. But I think this is the appropriate thing to do in an abundance of caution that we recognize there could be additional work beyond this calendar year going into 2019. And this is to try to make sure there are adequate funds that are authorized so that work can move forward and just not to surprise you with it. I mean, just put it out there now since there's a chance and not have to come back at the 11th hour with a request then.
Is there a way of capturing all costs related to anything associated with the groundwork? This is only going to happen while we're working with dirt. And at some point, the project's going to move out of the dirt. I mean, and so will that happen by November, December, by the rainy season, and when winter comes, they'll no longer be able to work there? Or is it possible that we're putting off to another construction season and we're still working in the dirt come, spring?
Yeah, so, basically, we've expended the funds up to that 8/9/18 date, so the entry of 9/25/18. So we're in progress in October, so some of those funds are being used right now. So, but yeah, so the 74,996 is intended to cover costs in October and November that are, current costs. And then we put in an additional contingency of 65,000 with the hope that we'll be finished with all the underground work within that dollar amount by maybe January or something like that. I mean, we're getting close to finishing the underground work. It's a little bit hard to predict because as you're building a project, you run into issues that have to be resolved that take additional time, that extend the schedule out, so we've done the majority of the foundation work, the underground piping, but we still have to get Gold Electric in there to do all the underground electrical work. So, this could go into December and maybe January.
And that's where the 65,000 comes in?
Correct, right.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Charles.
What percentage have we accumulated for our CIPs?
I'm just not understanding the question, sorry.
Okay, remember we always had a gauge of, we didn't want our changing plans to go over 10 or 15% of The total?
The add orders?
Well, the
Yeah.
original
Are-
estimated
yeah.
budget for that.
Or, okay,
Right,
add
this
orders,
is-
or,
So,
yeah.
I mean, we did go, the construction contract was more than anticipated too. I mean, the part of the issue is that it was a grant application. So-
Right.
So that, you know, after we submitted the grant application, there's no opportunity really to adjust that because it's fixed by
Oh,
you know,
okay.
the grant, the agency issuing those funds. So you don't really have an opportunity to adjust your budget. So you're well in advance of bidding the project, you have to establish your budget. So that's another challenge there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and again, what I can assure you is that this is something that, anything that's being brought to you and presented to you, Charles and his team have thoroughly evaluated and have worked to keep the cost as low as we can keep it, and to, I just, you know, most of what he does is not seen by the board or the public in the hours that he puts into this, and I just want you to know, I couldn't be more proud of him or the work that he does. He's incredible, and I so hope that he finishes his career here, because he adds value to every one of these projects, and this one has been no fun dealing with this issue, but he's done a brilliant job.
Thank you. Okay, then, shall I make a motion?
I think we should.
Okay. That we adopt resolution 2018 56, authorizing contract amendment for additional archaeological services by Garcia and Associates, Ganda, for the Jenny Lind Water Treatment Plant Pretreatment Project.
I'll second that.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, Rebecca, will you take roll?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes. Thank you.
Down to 3.
Did that include sending Deborah Grimes to school so she could be the consultant?
Let's hope so. Moving on, general manager's report.
All right, the only thing I want to add is that this week is Water Professionals Week. It's one that, a week that was recognized by the state legislature last year at the request of the Aqua Communications Committee, to really try to highlight what careers in our industry look like, what it takes to do the jobs that our staff do, how incredibly trained and experienced, and the licensure requirements and everything else. And then really, I think, to give the perspective that, this is a, as it's referred to as silver tsunami in our industry with the generational change and aging out of the workforce. And so it's a lot of great opportunities for employment. And certainly, we think about the role here locally in the community, and the fact that we're one of the largest employers, the opportunity for kids growing up here to be able to look to us as an opportunity, as a place to have a career and be able to stay here locally, go off and get, experience life, get their education, whatever, but to have this as a place to come back and spend their career, I think this is a great opportunity to tell that story. And so for that reason, we've got information on our website about this, and on Facebook as well about it. It's something that actually Joel is thinking about for next year, to have some even more outreach, to do some tours and things around this. I know we're very involved in job fairs. That's one of the things I know Stacy and Joel in particular have spent a lot of time on that with our high schools. And again, there's going to be a lot of opportunity for our young people to have great careers. So
Great.
That's all I have. Thank you.
No, thanks for presenting that. Okay, board reports. Bertha?
Yes, and you said that was National Water Week? Okay.
Water Professionals Week, yes.
Water Professions Week, okay, because that's right in step with tomorrow, because it's National Girls' Day.
What?
Let me look at my calendar.
Right, okay, because, take your daughter to work kind of thing,
Huh.
yeah, okay.
I thought it was
Because
un-PC to-
we
I see
talked-
Columbus Day was on Monday, but I don't have that on Thursday.
Well, if you watch the Today Show, you'll find it.
Oh,
Okay.
there's, yeah.
Anyway, because last year, We had talked about emphasizing women in water, and because this reminds me, they're going to be having the Women in Water session down at the Aqua Conference, and you guys can go if you want. You know, they let you in the door.
It's all wet.
Well, probably, maybe not these guys, but,
But emphasizing to the young ladies in high school and, you know, of course, you go to Columbia College and talk about the job opportunity for women in water.
You're absolutely right. Look at Tammy Green. I mean, you know, there's great careers that, again, I mean, this is an opportunity to have a meaningful career and work that is, you know, mentally stimulating, and you can do and have a work-life balance. You know, you can have a schedule that can work with a family. So it's a great
Well,
opportunity for
yeah.
people.
As a matter of fact, Donna Leatherman and I were talking about doing a Women in Water northern chapter, because there's a whole bunch down in Southern California. There's a lot of general managers down there, there's engineering, there are women in engineering and everything, and so we'll concentrate on the north. So, all I did was attend the wonderful East Bay Mud annual barbecue on Friday, and we had Rebecca, who was a star at the barbecue, but it was a great event, and it's just always a lot of fun, and Vicki was there, and Scott, and Dave shaking hands all over the place.
Well, I think that the really exciting thing about that was the transition that, you know, Richard Sykes is going to come in as the next executive director of UMRA, as Rob Alcott. Well, there'll be some crossover, but then in a matter of time, then he'll eventually retire out. He's done a fabulous job, but to have Richard there is, you know, he's been such a terrific partner for us to work with. I know, you know, Peter and I in particular worked with him continuously on some of the most important stuff we're dealing with, and he knows our issues, and he's you know, I can't think of a better person to come in to take that position.
Okay, one last note. I've invited the new general manager from Forest Meadows Homeowners Association. Her name is Debbie Shipman. I invited her to come to our meeting on the 24th, just so she can familiarize herself with CCWD, our organization, and, you know, and introduce her, of course, to the staff, to those people she hasn't met yet. She probably already knows Charles, or you probably know her already.
I will make it a point to go drop by and say hi.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Charles. Okay, but I hope, I've extended the invitation for our next meeting on the 24th. That's all.
Director Thomas.
Well, I didn't go to the barbecue this year because I was traveling back from Laverne, California, where I toured the Weymouth facility, and I'll reserve my specific comments till the next meeting. But there were some really very wonderful things, David, that were mentioned about you by Brent Hasty and Tim Quinn, who both attended that meeting down there. And they were somewhat apologetic about stealing you away, but anyway, I told them, don't worry about it, we're all happy, sort of happy. Anyway, it just makes me very proud that we had you for the 4 years. There were some really exciting things that I saw at that water treatment facility. It's just really mind-boggling, where you have a 1 million-gallon tank. You can see out on the horizon, and it's like that's the last thing that they fill up before it goes into this 14-foot by 14-foot pipeline. It's not exactly a pipeline, but anyway, they are currently filling and emptying that the equivalent of 159 times a day. So that's represents a heck of a lot of water.
It's a lot of Northern California water, huh?
Well, the interesting thing about that was that they had a very compelling list of statistics on that, and the highest water consumption period that they had was back in 1994. And it's, you can see the trend line going down and down and down and down consistently since then, due to a number of reasons. I mean, more efficient use of water, flushing toilets that can't go 6 gallons per flush anymore, and I don't know, it put a little bit different perspective on, you know, that they, unless there's something hidden in the statistics, it doesn't really look like that they're gobbling up increasing amounts of our Northern California water. They're trying hard to not take more water, they're taking less water, and they've got plans in motion, actually, about a partnership with LA to do a water treatment, wastewater treatment plant where they're gonna inject the water on a test basis back into the groundwater system. And anyway, it's, I think there's a whole lot of benefit in individual directors and people on staff. I mean, so some of the guys that I've mentioned to on staff about the water treatment facility, they said, man, I wish I could go to something like that. I'd like to see that. So there's tremendous value in just getting out of county and seeing what other people are doing.
You know, I just got to say, Director Thomas, I really appreciate you going down there and doing that, because, you know, it seems like we often, you know, with the regional programs, it's often the same familiar people, which is great to spend time with your colleagues in the region, but it's, you know, we know our region, right? I mean, there's, you know, most of it we've seen, we've been there and experienced it, and, you know, I was really pleased with we did the Region 3 program at Part E, and we had a number of people who came from Southern California, and I thought, you know, what a fantastic thing, you know. I mean, we got the whole day to talk to them about forest management, you know, and to have CAL FIRE there to talk about, you know, when they're putting people's lives at risk, trying to deal with these conditions that we have up here. I mean, that's, to me, that's what these programs really should be about, is that bringing, you know, really for people across regions to really understand the commonality that we have and the importance of our issues.
Well, you mentioned forest management. It was really quite remarkable and unexpected to hear Tim Quinn talk about that of the 12 things that Aqua has on their goals, that the second item on it is forest management, and he was really eager to acknowledge that Bob Dean was the seed for that discussion, and when he came and talked to Tim about it, he said, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We need to take that to the board, and quite remarkably, they have adopted that as their second most important goal. And then, you know, who would have thought? Came from here. So.
Yeah, just real quick, that's exactly, I mean, that was they do a strategic planning session every 2 years with the board to set their, you know, goals, and about a dozen of the priorities, and you go around, each board member has tickets that they put in a box for every one of the issues, and there's dozens of issues. And the outcome of that, you know, I was incredibly proud to see that forest management was number 2. I mean, blew me away. I mean, that meant that it was not just the regions that were directly affected, it was the rest of the state that realized, wow, this is something that has to be addressed. So that was a great achievement.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad I had a chance to go.
Great. Thank you, Russ. I got a couple things. Next week is our camera meeting. Instead of having a meeting, we are taking a tour, a field trip up. Got a bus picking us up here at the CCWD office. We'll be convening our meeting about 8:30 a.m. with a PowerPoint, and then going to go to the regulating reservoir up Highway 26, and then on to the West Point Water Treatment Plant. And then we'll pick up some sandwiches at Wilseyville store and go out to Shad's Lake for a tour of one of the CPUD properties, and then come down to their water treatment plant at Davidson, Jeff Davis Reservoir. And then back here meet back here at 2:30. So we do, I see Bertha's name is on the list. Dave Egerton is going as well. We got to send out another email yesterday. We said we still got room for 6 or 7 more people on the bus. That would be a good field trip for everybody. Quite a few people from Amador County are going as well, supervisors and Water District, Jackson Valley Irrigation District, and AWA. The following week, on Friday, the 26th, we do, Mountain Counties Water Resource Association is having its symposium at the Ridge in Auburn. Just put that on your calendars. Doors open up there at 8:30. There's still plenty of room for anyone who would like to go. And that's all I have. Our next board meeting, Wednesday, October 24th, right here. And then today, we did cancel the second meeting in both November and December. So that our next meeting after the October 24th is November 14th. Here is a regular board meeting. And with that, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Dave, could I
Never thought we'd make it.
see you?
What do you got?